So to install our wiring kit, just our 4-way flat for now, we're going to go ahead and take off the taillight covers, which are just these 4 screws. I've got this nice long screwdriver to be able to get in there because some of them are a little bit deep. Alright, so once we have our lovely mess of wires exposed, we just want to find our appropriate side, which should be labeled on our harness, and then we're just going to disconnect the old one and plug in the new one. Alright, so what I did is I just disconnected this piece, which was initially what was there, from this piece, which is what you guys just saw, and I just put in our new piece. So, the driver's side, just make sure you're, on the right side of your vehicle. Driver's side connected to this other portion here. So it's literally just making a bridge. And then we're just going to take the rest of this harness and try to find a way to get it into a nice little hidey hole and then route it to the other side, so we can do that with the other side as well. Also, don't forget the terminal grease for your electrical connections. I just ended up squeezing a little bit into each of the holes there. Now I'll do the same thing for the other 3 that we need to do. So once you're all hooked up with your terminal grease and everything, you can just go ahead and pull the rest of your wires down through this section of your tail light. And so there's a little bit of space that's back here. So you can see that. Yeah, you guys can see that. So yeah, you just pretty much drop everything through there, and then we're going to go ahead and kind of grab it, run it underneath, and then get it attached to the other side of our light there. But I'm going to go ahead and put this driver light back on, and then we'll continue on to that. So for the other side, it's going to be the same thing, just a little bit backwards, because instead of going in from the top, we're going to have to go in from the bottom with our wires and just get them up through the holes. So I guess in this case, it looks like it's actually better to do the passenger side last, just because it's a lot less wire to try to shove through the hole versus, all this fun stuff. So we'll do the same thing, get it through the hole, get it plugged in with some terminal grease, and then we should be good to cut the ground screwed into the frame. We're going to button up the passenger side as well, and then we can go ahead and secure all of those wires and get our ground, which is that white wire, oddly enough this time, screwed in. So as I was putting this back in, I just realized some of these are going to be kind of bumping against the metal in there, and so I just ordered some little foam stickers that can just pretty much go on here to just be a little shock absorber. I don't have them now, so I'm just going to button it up because it takes all of 5 minutes to take one of these off and just install them tomorrow or the day after when they get here. And now it's just the fun part of mounting everything together. So I'm thinking, at least for now, because I also want to get some of that foam stuff for the bottom of this. Not really necessary, I'm just being paranoid. But I might just put it here with some zip ties. You got some nice little holes here. Put those zip ties through, and then I'll probably take my ground here and just drill a hole through right here. And then when we do that 4-way flat 7-way round adapter, I'll just take the bolt out and put the ground for that on top of this ground, and just cinch them both together to the same hole. There is a hole right here already, so I can tell that there's nothing on this side, plus it's just open over here too. I'm not going to drill through any wires, so it's probably just going to be where I put that, nice and easy to see. So in order to actually get our 7-way round into the back of the truck, I'm using this bracket here. Once again, not a sponsor, not big enough to get any of those, but it's pretty much just this little bracket that you just set up against the receiver here. Like, it's just not tightened. I just got those bolts put in there just to see if it would fit, and it is a really tight fit. It's pretty easy to get the first one because you can kind of have it slid out a little bit, but that second one you're gonna have to like kind of finagle around a little bit to get it to go in there, but I was able to do it without doing anything too crazy. I just tried it out for like 10-15 minutes. After that, we're just going to try to get this thing into our bracket here. Just trying to route our wires through there. Whoopsie. There we go. And get our 4-way flat through there as well. Nice, okay. And so these wires we just want to run above our hitch receiver, and then our 4-way flat, we are going to, just imagine those are above right now, we're just going to end up mounting right here. So we're going to have everything kind of nice and pretty like that. All right, so I just got the bolts loosely put in there, just so y'all can see kind of what's going on. It's pretty simple, just a bolt with a little nut on the back. Nothing too fancy. And I've got some leftover pieces. Like I've got these two things left over. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. You don't see them included on the package list on the front, but you do see them included in the manual, but there's no reference to where they would be. So I'm just not going to worry about it. I can't imagine them being spacers. I also didn't bend the flange here, just because if you do, I can't imagine these bolts are going to be able to line up with each other. You don't really have a lot of material to bend. So I'm just leaving that as is. And so I'll tighten everything down and see if it'll hold itself a little bit better than it does loosely. So I actually removed the little converter that we got back there just while I tightened it, so I don't have an uneven weight pulling on this side, but it's pretty sturdy. Like it's really solid. And you don't have to worry about bending it beforehand, because when you tighten it down, it's gonna bend itself. So it's got that nice little lip forming around the edge anyway. Not like you really need it. This thing's not going anywhere. So I'm gonna put that back on, and then we're gonna get these tightened up, and then I'll show you guys that result. Yeah, so that's it's quite sturdy. You know, can get everything off pretty nice and good. It's dielectric grease in there. You're gonna want an 8mm to do this. You're gonna want like a deep socket. You're gonna want a wrench, and you're gonna want a flathead screwdriver. Flathead, just so you can put it in these notches here while you hit it from the back with the deep socket. The wrench is to do one of these screws. You've got a little bit of competition for space back there with some things, so having the wrench makes it a little easier. So the problem I'm running into now is the wiring is gonna be a little bit more time intensive than I thought. So I was hoping to get this grounded today, but as you can see, here is my ground, and you know, we're pretty much at full extension here with the setup that I have. But there is my ground wire over there. That's where it's bolted to. And that's really the closest point that I can have it. That's the frame. You know, I can't really put it, I don't want to put it through the bed. Don't want to put it to the actual hitch itself. So, and I'd ignore the wiring here. This is temporary. I just wanted to get everything just kind of sutured up. I have to undo the tail lights and fix some things. My backup camera actually stopped working once I did this. I think I need to tap into the new wires that run through there. But anyway, I'm hoping that I can find an adapter that's just two of these little loop things, and just bolt this one to that and put some more heat shrink over that, and then just have the other end just go and connect here. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to kind of decapitate this a little bit, just cut off these little wires, and either tap them into the ground, which I don't really want to do. I think it's kind of tacky. I like to keep the taps to a minimum. Realistically, I'll probably end up having to cut this and then soldering in more wire, and then just running it to here, resoldering it to this little circle, and then just drilling it in. But fingers crossed I can just find a piece that is just this circle on both ends, so I can just do it nice and easy. So I'm gonna look for that, let you guys know. All right, so I was able to just find some wire and find some of these lovely eyelets. So I just cut a piece to length, which for me I think was about 16 inches, and then we're just gonna go ahead and strip this and get it ready for the eyelets to go on. So I just use, you know, a little wire stripping tool, find the right size, give it a little light squeeze and go around. There we go. I want to do the same thing on the other side, which I'll let you guys figure out that side. I'm just going to go ahead and just get my wires twisted together and get my cap put on. So had an eyelet that was slightly larger at, I guess, significantly larger at the base, but still same hole diameter. So we're going to be using this one instead. And so I haven't really done much. I just folded over the wire from what you guys just saw to get this to be a little bit easier to fit in here. Try to get this to focus. There we go. So I'm just going to put this on. There we go. I'm going to crimp it down. But before we do that, I just want to make sure you have your heat shrink that's on there. So you can just end up putting that over, hitting it with a heat shrink and making it all nice and tidy afterwards. So I ended up actually just hitting both of these with the yellow section from one of these little attachments. And it seems pretty solid. Like, I can tug on it pretty decently and it's not going anywhere. Granted, I did hit it a few times with a few different styles, so this is probably the part of the video that you should experiment with for yourself. Don't necessarily follow what I'm doing, because as you can tell, I'm just kind of figuring this one out as I go. So yeah, let your own imagination take you this one. However, for the heat wrap, I am fairly confident how this works. So we're just gonna put this into position, and we're just gonna hit it with a torch. The idea behind why I'm deciding to do it like this is I have this screw that I did cut down quite a bit. I'll show you guys a picture of what I used there. But I'm going to take this screw and pretty much just hook it into both of my ends of grounding there. So just imagine these are two different pieces. And so just going to put my screw through both of them and then just hit it with some Loctite and thread on the nut, and then just use a wrench and then a screwdriver on this side to really cinch it down. Just be careful when you are cutting your screw, if you do end up cutting your screws like I did. If you end up hitting them with bolt cutters, you're gonna smash up the teeth here, and you're going to make it so the threads there, you're going to mash up your threads, and you're going to make it so it doesn't actually, your bolt doesn't thread on properly. So if you're going to do this, it might be in your best interest to use like a cutting wheel. Just be careful. The cutting wheel didn't seem to really fancy going through this too much, so make sure you got your eye pro. Just be careful while you're doing it if that's what you do decide to do. And then obviously I'll wrap this assembly in electrical tape just to help with insulation and whatnot. Alright, so to show you guys what that looks like in practice, here was our grounds coming from like the actual harness itself, and here is the piece that I just made and put in there. So like I said, put a little bit of Loctite on that bolt there, and we were able to, on that screw there, and we were able to put the bolt on, tighten it with the screwdriver and 3/8 ratchet, and we were able to get that nice and solid. So I'm going to just put some electrical tape on there just to keep it nice and tidy, and then we're going to have no problem now reaching the ground that I have set up for us over here. So we're chilling now. And then we're also going to get all of these wires taken care of today, make them nice and pretty. This is kind of my standard for aftermarket wiring. I've done all of this stuff in there, so I'm gonna try to make the rest of it kind of look the same, because this is kind of driving me crazy, this temporary setup. All right, so to do our reverse light line, for us it's the yellow, so I've just put some terminal grease in there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and strip some wire that I've already cut to length and go ahead and just clamp it down in there. I already showed you guys how to do that with the ground, so I'm going to skip that on the camera, and we'll get to it once it's already hooked up. Alright, so if this looks like a cluster, it's because it is. This is a mess, just forgive me on this. But this is going to be our reverse light for the trailer harness. I labeled it so I can kind of avoid this confusion in the process or in the future. It's just a heat shrink wrap with a label on it. So you literally just want to tap into it with some of these guys. Something like that. And you should be good. I was able to get the reverse camera working again by just tapping in. So you just need to figure out where your reverse is. So in my case, you know, reverse light is this little middle section. We have our negative, which is black and white, and then our positive, which is blue and green, I believe. Yeah, so it's green with a blue stripe. And so if you trace those back, for our case, the blue and green stripe is going to be kind of underneath this most prominent wire that you can see, so right underneath that one. So it's this middle terminal at the top. So if we follow it to the other side, we're going to end up with this black wire here, and that's what I've got, you know, my reverse light and my camper or the trailer reverse hooked up to. So that's how you do that bit. Alright, so before I get too carried away with trying to get the wires routed, I just want to show you guys what I did here. So I've got the controller itself just mounted up here with 2 metal zip ties to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I put a little bit of some like foam tape underneath it just to dampen the vibrations and absorb some of those. Really not necessary. Do that if you want to only. I've got the 4-way flat wires over here, just kind of like zip tied to keep them somewhat orderly so they don't look like crap later on. And I've got the connection going over here. I'm gonna end up, like, this isn't done, this is mid-progress. I'm gonna end up kind of routing it over here somehow. Both of the grounds are, you know, attached now. They're doing well. And so I just kind of wanted to show you the wiring process. Now I had to undo that over there to move all this to get it to be over the hitch itself. So make sure you do that before, and you don't have to worry about undoing lights and rerouting things. All right, so we've got all the wires kind of situated now. I think these are just gonna have to stay here, to be honest with you. I don't know if they're going to really fit as much of them as there are inside of these little tubes. But I was able to get the ground all nice and towed away, and able to get all the other wires that kind of lead everywhere else nice and squared away. I've got the 2 4-way flats kind of connected to each other and zip tied up there. This long piece is just for these 2 wires that are temporarily held here, and I didn't cut it because I want to be able to identify it so I can get rid of it later. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really unsatisfied with how it turned out. I think it's all right. It's a little bit busy because I do have some other stuff going on here. Like I've got wires from the front running back for the radio and the backup camera and all that good stuff. So I do already have a couple things there, but it's not terrible. All right, so I've measured out my wires. I just kind of did a little rough estimate, just trying to eyeball it, see how long it's going to be from the back where it plugged in to everything else. And I have 21 feet for the black wire, which goes to the battery, and then 18 feet for the blue wire, which goes to the brake receiver. I'm not sure if this is going to work perfectly or if I'm going to have a lot of excess left over, I'm going to have to cut anything. But that's kind of what we're going with right now. So it actually brought out some crimp connectors to do this with some labels, just because I've become a little anal with labeling electrical stuff ever since the mess that I have behind my taillights. But you know, I didn't actually take notice that these already have little crimp connectors connected to them, so that's pretty convenient. So we just gotta strip our wires here, put them in, and then just use a crimp tool to crimp them down. I'm still gonna put those little heat shrink wraps around them just so I can tell what they are, but it's convenient. All right, so we have both of these in. Had a little bit of a mishap with this one. I was trying to use the blue setting on here because that was what was supposed to be for 14 gauge instead of yellow, which this connector tells me needed to be yellow. So I ended up breaking, so I had to put in my own. But that's okay, you know, just passing it along. So you guys don't do the same thing, which, you know, like I said, it's color coded. If you see yellow, you should use yellow, but I was just in the mind of blue, 14 gauge. It's my wires, so that's what I'm gonna use. But anyway, the tough part now is just trying to route this the way that you want it to go. So this looks like a little bit of a confusing mess. But what we're trying to do, at least in my case, is put this into one of these old wire protectors, which I've already done for previous installs. And I'm just gonna have this run. It runs like along the frame. It's away from any moving components. It's away from anything that's gonna, you know, cause damage to it. This part I'm actually not gonna really be able to show you guys too well because it's literally just gonna be probably for the next, I don't know, hour or two, cutting zip ties where I've put this previously into shoving these wires into the slits from these looms here. It's not gonna be very riveting. It's also not gonna be very, you know, good quality video because it's going to be kind of fun. Also, make absolutely certain that you have routed this the correct way, because if you do get it tangled up against some wires like it's not supposed to be, I mean, you have a whole 20 something feet of wire that you need to pull back through and have to undo all your progress on. So you don't want to do that. So really be diligent when you're figuring out your path here. Like I routed these through probably 3 or 4 times just to make sure this was going to be going in the right way. You know, 2 or 3 of those are mix-ups, so I'm glad I did it now before I started putting things in. So just be careful. So just checking with you guys at this point. Got the battery wire pretty much wired up to the front. Got the brake wire stopping where it's supposed to over here, right before it goes into that spot. I just need to push it through. Just getting the battery wire just put into the same wire protectors that I have for my camper shell lights. They're already in there. I just pulled it out and put them in. But this is pretty much what I've been doing the last, you know, 2-3 hours. Just kind of pushing wires into sleeves. Nothing too crazy, nothing too complicated. But yeah, almost there. All right, so all that wiring has been pushed through into the places it needs to be. Sorry, I did get a little carried away. Kind of forgot I was making a video for a little bit here. But nothing too crazy. I just kind of pushed my wires into the same path that I had already before for my camper lights. And the only thing that I really probably should have showed you guys that I didn't was putting in these fuses, which are pretty simple. It's just like a crimp that you would normally do. Like it's the same attachment style. So they start off like this. I think they're just called inline fuse holders. Nothing too fancy. Got 10 of them for like, I want to say like $8. But they start off like this. You just cut them. I kind of messed one up because I wanted to have it, you know, labeled. I forgot to put my label before I put my crimp, so just redid it. But this is what they look like. You just cut them, strip the wires like you normally would, and then you just crimp them together. We'll just use the same attachment methods that we've kind of talked about for the other wires for these. There's really nothing special about how you'd attach these. They just go in between your battery terminal directly, which I have like this little blade attachment type thing underneath the terminal. They just go between that and your actual wire. So this is the wire for the trailer battery stuff, and it's just the black wire. You can see that it then turns into a red wire with a fuse. It's just connected, you know, somewhere inside of this sheath, and that's literally just splicing both of the wires together and using one of those like metal cylinders that we talked about earlier, and just clamping them down with this tool. And same thing with these guys here. The only difference between these and the other style we were talking about is the face is just a little bit different. So it's like the female end to go onto the male end for this style connection that I have here, which that's not the only connection style that there is, but that's what I've got going on my setup. Then you just put a fuse into this little spot here. Sorry, give me a second. So you just put a fuse into this spot here and you're good to go. I haven't put a fuse in for the trailer yet. This is just for the camper interior, like the little light inside my camper shell. It's a 3-amp fuse because it's literally just one LED. I'm assuming the amperage is like less than 2 amps, so I don't want it to have a huge like 30-40 amp draw. So just put in a fuse that's going to be slightly higher than what you think you're going to need it for, like just barely higher. That way if you have any kind of weirdness, you don't have to worry about having a short and having things cook. The fuse will just blow. For the wires over here under the truck, oh god, you know, I just put some electrical tape over where they go in, but that blue wire is now going inside the truck. It's running along underneath here, up through here, and I have it just kind of running along underneath my my mat here. Kind of see it there, and just goes over here, and I just have it tucked away right now behind here. Also have that labeled. My trailer brakes, little zip tie there holding that on because it's not heat shrunk yet. But I'm planning on just putting my brake controller right here. I'm actually planning on just using adhesive, the same kind of stuff that these letters and stuff get held on with, and just kind of taping it to the side. This is like a 20-year-old truck. I don't want to, I don't want to mess with putting holes in places where they shouldn't be at this point. I want to try to keep it as able to be returned to stock as possible, so I don't want to drill holes. So that's how I'm going to attach my brake controller. But that'll be for another day. I'm putting this back. I'm about to drive out somewhere right now. I don't want it to be in the way. But yeah, hopefully this is helpful, guys. Sorry, that wasn't really the most helpful segment. A lot of it was just routing wires. That took a couple hours, and then just plugging some wires in, which we kind of talked about a little earlier. I didn't want to overkill you with that or drag on too long. Also, based off of what I read, you only want your fuses on the positive battery terminal, not on the negative, not on the side that connects directly to ground. I'm a novice when it comes to this, admittedly, so if you have other advice, you know, post in the comments. I'll try to throw in the website or the forum that I found that information on. It seemed to be, you know, all over the place, depending on if you're looking for automotive applications versus like telephone line applications versus like boat applications versus, you know, a whole wide range of electrical spectrum there. But it seemed like the consensus for automotive stuff is you want it on the positive battery terminal, unless you have, you know, the reverse polarity where your negative is your positive and whatnot. But if you want opposite of whatever goes to ground. So negative battery terminal here, you know, we see our ground wire going directly off of our negative terminal. Fuses are on the opposite side of that. Best way I could explain it. And I'll post that in the description. Go ahead and, you know, talk about that in the comments if you disagree. So yeah, that 21 feet for my battery wire and the 18 feet for my brake wire seems to work out pretty well. I can't say with 100% certainty about the brake wire just yet, just because I haven't wired in the last bits I need to wire in. But the 21 feet for the battery did work well with the length of connection that I had for the fuses. And then I'm just kind of showing you guys where it's wired along the frame.